Put your hand behind your back.
I'm finna walk out.
Put your hands behind your back. Now. Put your hands behind your back.
Let somebody get this
No, you're not listening to me.
off me. What the fuck is wrong with you?
I gave you orders.
I don't give a what the fuck. I don't give a fuck. Get the fuck off me. What the fuck wrong with you? Get the off me.
Now that's a 270.
Ever walk into your local grocery store and find it, well, completely transformed into chaos?
Oh, yeah.
Today we're diving into a Reddit thread that
Okay.
captures exactly that.
Yeah.
It all started with a video from a Kroger in Savannah, Georgia, back in April 2023, showing a group of teenagers causing like a major disturbance.
Oh, wow.
Now, almost a year later,
Okay.
the video has gone viral on Reddit.
Wow.
And the comments are, well, they're really fascinating.
I bet. What's so interesting about this is how one simple incident can spark such a huge range of reactions.
Right.
Because you see everything in this thread.
It's crazy.
Generational differences, the role of social media. It's like a microcosm of, bigger societal debates.
It really does go beyond just like a kids these days thing.
For sure.
Right. And you see people talking about like stricter parenting,
Yeah.
people grappling with like peaceful parenting and how that works
Yeah.
in the face of this chaos.
Yeah.
And then you get that classic, what is happening in this country sentiment.
Oh, yeah. That's a common one. And it's funny, the thread starts off pretty lighthearted, almost like an inside joke about the police uniforms.
Yeah. I saw that.
Cultural Geologist 3, I think it was, mistakes them for another department because of, like, the simple design.
Right.
And then you've got people like Rosico and Gansenjoyer, they're jumping in with, their appreciation for those recognizable Savannah PD uniforms.
Yeah, it's like this little moment of local pride
PD
amidst all the craziness.
Yeah, that local connection comes up a lot, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's it too.
You see users like Joe Legas and Chogiwa9397, they're like, wait, that's my Kroger?
Yeah.
You can almost picture them like texting their friends, did you see this?
Right, yeah.
It's happening in their community.
Exactly.
At a place they probably go to every week.
Yeah.
So that personal connection, I think it definitely adds to like the intensity of some of the reactions.
For sure. And speaking of intensity, we got to talk about the parenting styles that people are bringing up.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
You have Fat Sandwich talking about getting, quote, whooped for that type of behavior.
Right.
But then you have Shiver Mednetters kind of jokingly, I think, wishing for like a night in jail for their kids just to get some peace and quiet.
It's like these two completely different camps, right?
Yeah.
The spare the rod, spoil the child approach.
Right.
Versus, the hope that somehow peaceful parenting can win out, even with teenagers.
Right.
It's a tough one.
And then you have Mayeg Zerbeg, who brings like this whole other layer to the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd they say?
They're a former teacher at an alternative school.
Oh, wow.
And they talk about how these kids are often dealing with like a lot of stuff that we don't see.
That's a good point.
And how the system is in a lot of ways failing them.
Right. We don't always get the full picture.
Their insights are really interesting. They talk about the challenges of using restraint techniques, the gender dynamics of it all,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
and just like the exhaustion that both students and staff face in these environments.
It's a good reminder that there's often so much more to the story.
Right. It's more than just a viral video.
Exactly.
They actually say, quote, I could write a book and it would be quite compelling.
I bet they could.
And I kind of think they're right.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how much we're missing when we just see like a few minutes of a chaotic video.
For sure. We only get this little snapshot.
Okay, but before we get too serious here,
Okay.
we have to talk about the card incident.
The what?
The card incident. User His4 Hot Sauce had this comment that just became like an instant classic.
Okay.
He said, and I quote, "Damn. Man, not the cards."
Oh, no, not the cards. I get it. It's like, even in this crazy situation,
Right.
people find humor in these small details. It's great. Like, everyone's imagined losing their favorite deck of cards.
Right.
And then Saved by the Blood 72 replies with the reverse card.
Right.
It's just funny. It's like even online, people find ways to, connect over these shared experiences.
Yeah, it's that shared human experience.
Exactly.
So we have all these opinions on parenting, some really insightful comments from somebody who's been, working with troubled youth, and then a little dash of humor thrown in for good measure.
A good mix.
And all of this is before we even get into the debate about the police response.
Right.
And that one teenager who, wasn't arrested.
The calm
Yeah.
one.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's where things get even more interesting because then we see how, personal bias and individual perspectives can totally shape how we see things,
Right.
even when we're all watching the same video.
Exactly. One of the big things people are talking about in this thread is how the police handled everything.
Yeah, police response is always a hot topic online.
You have some users, like Big Deuces, praising the officers for their restraint.
Makes sense. A lot of people are quick to criticize law enforcement.
Right. But Big Deuces is saying they did a good job de-escalating.
Yeah, that the officers showed patience. Didn't just, jump to using force.
Right. But then you have somebody like Skeetles who's arguing the opposite.
Really?
Saying they should have used force quicker to, take control.
Interesting.
Their argument is that the longer it went on, the more dangerous it got.
Yeah, I can see that point too. Some people really value that, immediate order.
Right, and being concerned about safety.
Well, for the officers, for bystanders, it's definitely a valid concern.
It's wild how Mayeg Serbig, our former teacher at the alternative school, weighs in on all this.
Oh yeah, what do they say?
They talk about how using force with teenagers, it can be, really complicated.
All right, it's not just black and white.
They actually mention how restraint techniques, they often need to be adjusted based on the individual.
Oh.
Especially when you consider, gender dynamics.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What works on one student might not work on another, and if you miscalculate, things can get worse.
Yeah, and they also talk about the emotional toll, on everybody involved.
Yeah.
The staff, the students, it's a lot.
Right, you can tell they've been there, lived it.
It adds so much nuance to this whole discussion about, what's the right response? What should the police have done?
It reminds us that in these online debates, we don't always have, all the information.
Yeah, it's easy to judge based on a short clip, but there are people, real people, involved in these situations.
Right, so we've talked about the police, but then there's this other layer to all of this that I find fascinating.
What's that?
The one teenager who wasn't arrested.
Oh, yeah, the one who seems, pretty calm through the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
And even with that, seemingly simple observation, you see all of these different interpretations popping up in the thread.
Like what?
You have Cabot-Geisland, who initially, sees the teen as a good kid.
Okay.
Assuming they're just trying to stay out of trouble.
Uh-huh.
But then they change their mind after noticing that the teen asks the police a question during the arrest.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Why y'all arresting them? Obstruction.
And Cabot-Geisland sees that question as, disrespectful.
Interesting.
But then, you have burden this damn account, and they're passionately defending the teen.
Really?
Saying they were the only one acting rationally.
Yeah, strong take.
And they see the question as, a legitimate attempt to understand what's happening, not being disrespectful.
It's wild how two people can see the same thing so differently.
Right.
What one person sees as rude, another sees as completely reasonable.
Exactly. Without knowing more, what was going through that teen's head, who knows, right?
Right. We're all filling in the gaps with our own assumptions.
It's like a lesson in critical thinking.
It really is. We have to be careful about jumping to conclusions, especially online.
And then remember, all of this went down in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Not just some random incident, It's in a specific community. And that local context, it adds something to the whole conversation.
For sure. You see that local pride popping up.
Right. Like John Paul Georgiornigu, defending the Mall Blue Vitty Kroger, calling it the best grocery store in Savannah.
Love that. Even amidst the chaos, gotta rep your local spots.
But then you have, one Initiative 8166 saying, get your kids out of Savannah.
Oh, wow.
Saying it's a terrible place for young people.
Bit of an overreaction, wouldn't you say?
Right. One incident at Kroger doesn't define a whole city.
Exactly. That's like saying, don't go to that restaurant. I found a hair in my food once.
And then, just when you think you've seen it all, Altruistic Poet 3 comes in with a story about seeing a similar incident at the same Kroger.
No way, really?
During its renovation.
Hold on, is this place cursed or something?
Right, is there something about this specific location?
Makes you think. What we see online, even with all these different perspectives, is only a tiny piece of the puzzle.
So we've got unruly teens, debates about parenting and the police, insights from someone who's worked with troubled youth, a little humor, and now a dash of local intrigue.
It's a lot, isn't it?
It's amazing how much this Reddit thread reveals about, how we think and interact online.
It really is. And here's the thing. All of this happened over a year ago.
Right.
But people are just now getting fired up about it.
It's crazy.
What does that say about how we react to news, especially when it's filtered through these platforms like Reddit?
I feel like it just hit people in a certain way, you know?
Yeah.
The whole thing, the kids, the cards, even the way the police handled it.
Yeah.
Like it tapped into some bigger anxieties that we're already feeling.
It's almost like the video became this lightning rod, you know? All these debates about generation shifting, social media's impact, the whole like ongoing thing with law enforcement. It's all playing out in the comments. And it's happening months later.
Yeah, it's not even like this is breaking news or anything. People are choosing to engage with it now, almost a year later. What do you think that says about how we, I don't know, process information online?
It's definitely something to think about. I think it speaks to the algorithms, you know?
Yeah.
How they shape what we see. This video probably popped up in people's feeds because of their interests. Or maybe a friend shared it or a community they follow.
Right.
And then boom, you're suddenly in this whole whirlwind of opinions.
Without even having like all the background information.
Exactly.
So it's not just the incident itself. It's how the algorithm decides to like show it to us.
Right.
And when it shows it to us, how that affects how we react.
I think you're hitting on something really important. It's like these platforms are creating these echo chambers.
Yeah.
Certain narratives get louder, even if they're not, like the full story.
Right. It's like we need to learn a new way to consume information, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
In this digital age. It's not enough to just passively read or watch. We have to be like active about it.
You got it.
Filtering, questioning, looking for other viewpoints.
That's where critical thinking comes in.
Yeah.
You know, being able to look at information objectively.
Right.
Recognize biases. Evaluate sources. Yeah. It's a skill we need everywhere, not just online.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into, well, the Kroger chaos, what would you say is like the main takeaway for our listener? What should they remember when they're scrolling through their social media or see these, viral stories?
I think the biggest thing to remember is every story has more than one side. There's rarely a simple right answer or like a single perspective that's the correct one.
Yeah.
It's up to us to, think critically about the information we come across.
Be more discerning.
Exactly. Don't just let algorithms tell you what to think. Look for different points of view, question your own assumptions.
And remember that these are real people we're talking about. Well said. So maybe next time you're at the grocery store, just take a moment,
Okay.
to appreciate the peace and quiet. And maybe, just maybe, keep an eye on those cards.
Right.
You ever know when a game might break out? Like